her saying how important it was to establish a relationship between Caitlin as a coach because she's the centerpiece of everything we do.
Like forge that relationship with her for all the reasons.
I mean, really important. I'd had just a little bit of a relationship with Caitlin from calling her games a number of times, when she was in college, but it was very important. Look, she's obviously the centerpiece of everything that we do. And most important.
At least that was said, because I think a lot of the time, not even a lot of the time, she has said it herself. It's not like people are making this up, but she has said it herself, basically, like, we're building around Kelsey Mitchell.
The words dropped like a bomb on Sue Bird's own podcast. Stephanie White's unfiltered truth about the Fever's inner turmoil and the unspoken tension with Caitlin Clark just ripped through the league, forcing a shockwave of speculation. Sources close to the team, reeling from this candid admission, whispered about Clark's growing frustration, leading to an unthinkable ultimatum. Now Bird herself is scrambling, facing down a PR nightmare. The entire WNBA is holding its breath after Clark's alleged threat to walk away from the Fever, igniting a firestorm that nobody, least of all Sue Bird, saw coming. This isn't just drama, it's a seismic shift that could redefine the league's future, stemming from a podcast interview meant to be an innocent peek behind the curtain. The league is buzzing with whispers of Clark demanding radical changes, or else the implications are staggering, and the fallout is just beginning to unfold.
I think a lot of the time, not even a lot of the time, she has said it herself. It's not like people are making this up, but she has said it herself, basically, like, we're building around Kelsey Mitchell. She is a big reason why people believe this team is solely being built around Kelsey Mitchell, because as much as anything, she said it. So at least she's saying Caitlin's the centerpiece of what we're doing.
Importantly for me was just connecting and building trust. I don't know how she does what she does and handles it so gracefully. I'm not sure, myself as a 23-year-old would have been able to handle it the way that she does and still perform.
Stephanie White's stunning declaration on Sue Bird's podcast that Caitlin Clark is the centerpiece of everything we do directly contradicted previous team narratives. This sudden shift in public messaging sent shockwaves, exposing a fundamental philosophical struggle within the Fever organization. Insiders had long believed the team was building around Kelsey Mitchell, a statement Clark herself had reportedly voiced frustration over. This inconsistent messaging, laid bare on a national platform, immediately created a fault line in team cohesion. The public acknowledgement of Clark's central role, coming so late, felt like an urgent course correction rather than an established fact, a move many are now seeing as an attempt to appease a star player whose patience was wearing thin. The revelation intensified whispers of internal discontent, hinting at a power struggle behind the scenes. This very public attempt to redefine roles could be the flashpoint for the rumored bench drama.
To be honest, I'm a very honest, transparent coach. You're gonna know, what I'm thinking or where I'm coming from. And if you don't, and you certainly want to ask, but I'm going to be honest, and I think that I certainly appreciate that about her. And I'm also the same kind of psycho that she is in terms of competitiveness. Now it comes out in different ways. But we both just really want to win, and we want to set ourselves and our teammates up for success.
I mean, she answered that well. And in fairness, Stephanie White always speaks well. And I do think
White openly admitted she needed to earn Caitlin Clark's trust, a statement that sent a shiver down spines across the WNBA. This wasn't a casual comment, it exposed an underlying fragility in the foundational relationship between the team's biggest star and its coach. The idea that such a crucial bond wasn't automatic but something requiring active cultivation suggested a lack of initial connection, or perhaps even early friction. White's insistence on being a very honest, transparent coach, while simultaneously stressing the need to earn trust, painted a stark picture of the challenges she faced. Was there an initial barrier? Was Clark's skepticism rooted in previous experiences or perceived slights? This admission on Sue Bird's platform fueled speculation that Clark's commitment wasn't as solid as once believed, especially if trust was a hurdle from day one. The implications for team dynamics and Clark's long-term future with the Fever suddenly became much clearer. The struggle for trust at the highest level is always a catalyst for drama, and this was no exception.
We want to set ourselves and our teammates up for success.
I mean, she answered that well. She answered that well. And in fairness, like, Stephanie White always speaks well. And I do think there is a mutual respect there between the two of them. And realistically, I think until it's proven that it will not work, Caitlin Clark will want Stephanie White as her coach. Definitely more so than Christy Sides. Definitely more so than Christy Sides, if we're being completely honest here. Like, Christy Sides was not the greatest as far as coaches were concerned. But yeah, so let's go and take a listen to the difference between
Coach White didn't pull any punches discussing the unique challenges of a young team. Her remarks about needing to repeat things a lot and the slippage from one day to the next resonated deeply, hinting at a potential source of frustration for a demanding player like Caitlin Clark. While seemingly innocuous, these comments, aired on Sue Bird's influential podcast, could easily be interpreted as thinly veiled critiques of the team's inexperience and lack of immediate grasp on complex systems. For a player of Clark's caliber, known for her elite understanding of the game, consistently having to revisit basic concepts could be incredibly taxing and demotivating. This underlying tension between elite talent and developmental needs creates a fertile ground for bench drama, where seasoned expectations clash with raw potential. The struggle to maintain consistent high performance day to day, as articulated by White, paints a picture of a challenging environment that might test the patience of even the most dedicated athletes. Could this constant repetition be a silent contributor to Clark's alleged discontent?
Veteran team, and as also being a veteran on a young team, it's very different being in the position where you are kind of the young player. They have to repeat things for, and vets are on you, and then when you're a vet on a young player, you're standing there like, how the fuck are they not getting this? But I see two different types of coaching.
A certain, like, we want to play a horn set a certain way. Like, this is our base way we're going to play it. We shouldn't have to go over that and shoot around every single day. Just our adjustments, right? Well, with a young team, sometimes you do. So a lot more time in that. It was also a team in Indiana that had been in the bottom of the league in defense. And so we spent a lot of time just on defensive
The podcast laid bare the Fever's abysmal defensive record, revealing they were in the bottom of the league in defense, and explicitly criticizing the previous coaching staff's approach as laughably simplistic. White's pointed comparison to Christy Sides' get-stopped strategy and relying solely on Christy Wallace on the best player was a public indictment of the team's recent past. This raw honesty on Sue Bird's widely heard podcast painted a picture of a franchise starting from scratch, defensively bankrupt before White arrived. For a player like Caitlin Clark, inheriting such a fundamentally flawed system must have been a crushing blow. The sheer mountain of work required to instill basic defensive principles, a task White detailed meticulously, highlighted the systemic issues Clark walked into. This wasn't just about learning, it was about unlearning years of poor habits, a grueling process that could easily lead to a star player questioning her situation and the team's ability to truly compete. The weight of this defensive burden exposed on Bird's platform certainly adds fuel to the fire.
Idea of defense was get stops. Like, in fairness, like, she did not. Chrissy Sides is the worst. Like, she kept saying, I'm a defensive coach. And like, I kid you not, the defense was put Christy Wallace on the other team's best player. That was their defense.
Floor, but in particular on the defensive end, with some of the regression, just re-emphasizing and drilling some things. Like, we could get away with in Connecticut a drill that covered 4 things at once. With young players, you can't do that yet. Now, my hope is that we're going to eventually get there. But certainly that, and there's no substitute for experience. And this is a group.
White's glowing description of Kelsey Mitchell as a pros pro, low maintenance, and the player who had been through the trenches with this franchise was undeniably high praise. But on Sue Bird's show, this passionate endorsement, while deserved, could be seen as inadvertently highlighting a potential disconnect or even a subtle slight to newer high-profile additions like Caitlin Leck. By emphasizing Mitchell's journey and her deserved opportunity to be a part of the successful years, White perhaps unintentionally framed Mitchell as the enduring heart of the franchise. This narrative, while powerful, might have inadvertently overshadowed Clark's own critical role and amplified the perception of a divided locker room. In a climate already thick with rumors of internal strife, elevating one star's narrative so passionately on a public platform could easily be misconstrued, adding another layer to the bench drama that's now engulfing engulfing the team. Was this an attempt to balance the narrative, or did it expose deeper currents in the team's dynamics where old loyalties might clash with new expectations?
I was really happy with that for her about that. With AB, I learned how high of an IQ player she is, how great of a facilitator she is. That she.
Yeah, I think how did it take her coaching Aaliyah Boston to learn how good a facilitator she was? In her defense, Christy Sides was the player who started using AB as the hub. Christy Sides post Olympic break was the player that turned AB into what AB is now. Like, no, it was Sides, not Stephanie White. Like, post Olympic Aaliyah Boston was when people started calling her female Jokic.
She could be almost like a point forward. You know, I didn't.
A surprising revelation came from White regarding Aaliyah Boston's high IQ and great facilitation. Talent she admitted she didn't get that watching her play in college or in her first couple of years. This admission on Sue Bird's podcast, while praising Boston, also subtly highlighted a past oversight by the league or even previous Fever staff. What's more, the host's own counterpoint that Christy Sides, the much maligned previous coach, was actually the one who started using AB as the hub, transforming her into female Yoke post-Olympics, was a truly stunning reversal. This pointed correction, made live on air, cast an awkward shadow on White's narrative and underlined a broader organizational struggle to recognize and fully utilize player talent. Such a public disagreement over a foundational player's development, especially on a platform as prominent as Bird's, could certainly contribute to the atmosphere of uncertainty and internal friction. If even basic player strengths were misidentified or credited to the wrong coach, it speaks volumes about the tumultuous environment Caitlin Clark might find herself in, feeding into the bench drama narrative.
Not Stephanie White. Like, post-Olympic Aaliyah Boston was when people started calling her female Jokic.
She could be almost like a point forward. You know, I didn't get that watching her play in college. I didn't get that, you know, in her first couple of years.
How? You literally played against her. You literally played against her in the playoffs. Like, how did you scout this team so well and not realize that about Aaliyah Boston? Aaliyah Boston was elite. She was always an elite passer. She was an elite hub. Like, in fairness to Christy Sides, whether it was Sides or whether it was the players just taking over and coaching.
White vividly described Caitlin Clark as Taylor Swift 2.0, emphasizing the immense spotlight and weight that she carries. This powerful analogy, shared on Sue Bird's platform, painted a vivid picture of the unparalleled pressure Clark navigates daily. While intended as praise for Clark's ability to compartmentalize and perform under such scrutiny, it also underscored the extraordinary burden placed upon her shoulders. Such an intense, constant spotlight, coupled with the team's ongoing struggles, creates an environment ripe for burnout and frustration. If the team's performance isn't matching the stratospheric expectations placed on its singular star, that immense weight can quickly become unbearable. This public acknowledgement by White on a highly visible podcast might have inadvertently amplified the very pressure Clark is trying to manage, potentially contributing to a breaking point. Could the Taylor Swift 2.0 moniker intended to celebrate actually highlight the profound isolation and expectations that could lead to an athlete wanting to quit a situation deemed untenable? The pressure is immense, and the podcast brought it to the forefront. Perhaps the most telling revelation came when White lamented the rarity of all three stars, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell, hooping well simultaneously. This candid admission on Sue Bird's podcast highlighted a critical systemic flaw in the team's chemistry and execution. It wasn't just about individual talent, it was about the collective synergy failing to materialize consistently. This inability to maximize their combined star power inevitably leads to team losses, escalating frustration, especially for a winner like Clark. If the pieces aren't fitting and the collective isn't greater than the sum of its parts, a star player might quickly lose faith in the project. The broadcast revelation that there were very, very few times where all three of them played well was a damning indictment of the team's current state. This lack of collective success, broadcast to the world, provides a tangible reason for Clark's rumored discontent and the bench drama that has now gripped the WNBA, suggesting fundamental issues far beyond individual player performance. The struggle for cohesion is real, and it was put on full display. White's insistence that players must understand what it takes on a daily basis to avoid losing games that you shouldn't lose underscored a foundational expectation gap within the young Fever squad. This message, subtly delivered on Sue Bird's podcast, implied a deficit in professional maturity or consistent effort from some players. For a hyper-competitive leader like Caitlin Clark, witnessing these preventable losses due to perceived daily slippage could be a massive source of internal conflict and frustration. The coach's plea for sustained excellence hinted at deeper issues than just talent, perhaps a struggle with the mental grind of a professional season. Such a stark observation, made publicly, adds another layer to the brewing bench drama. It suggests an environment where not everyone is pulling their weight consistently, leading to frustration among those who are. The public airing of this challenge paints a clear picture of an uphill battle for the Fever, and for Clark, the burden of leadership in such circumstances becomes even heavier, potentially pushing her to the brink. White's striking admission, "I'm also the same kind of psycho that she is in terms of like competitiveness," was a fascinating moment on Sue Bird's podcast, highlighting a shared intense drive between coach and star. While intended to bridge a connection, it also subtly underscored the potentially volatile nature of two such driven personalities. This shared psychopathic desire to win, while a positive trait, can also lead to fierce clashes when expectations aren't met or strategies diverge. The dynamic between two hyper-competitive individuals, especially when one is coaching the other, can quickly escalate from mutual respect to intense friction if not carefully managed. The very intensity that binds them could also be the source of powerful disagreements, creating underlying bench drama. This shared trait suggests a relationship of both deep understanding and potential high-stakes conflict, where every decision carries immense emotional weight, making the recent tension all the more understandable. White revealed that coaching this young team demanded more from us. Coaches in terms of our energy, in terms of our ability to keep them at a certain level, in terms of our discipline to maintaining detail and not letting the slippage occur as much. This candid insight on Sue Bird's podcast highlighted the sheer exhaustive effort required from the coaching staff, implicitly because of the player's developmental needs. For a player like Caitlin Clark, who thrives on precision and elite execution, this constant battle against slippage and for maintaining detail could be incredibly disheartening. It suggests an environment where the foundational elements are still a struggle rather than a given, which might make achieving consistent winning nearly impossible. Such a public articulation of the coaching staff's immense burden hints at a profound challenge within the team dynamics, a struggle for collective discipline that might be testing Clark's patience to its limits. This demand for constant vigilance and meticulous detail from coaches, simply to prevent regression, could be the silent killer of team morale and a prime cause of the bench drama now making headlines. The conversation on Sue Bird's podcast starkly revealed a clear player preference. Caitlin Clark will want Stephanie White's coach, definitely more so in Christie's sides. This direct comparison, favoring White over the previous coach, while seemingly positive for White, also highlighted a past coaching relationship that was clearly detrimental to team morale and player satisfaction. The implication is that Clark endured a less than ideal situation under sides, and while White offers an improvement, the scars of past coaching failures linger. Such a definitive statement about coaching preferences aired publicly underscores the instability and inconsistent leadership Clark and her teammates have faced. It points to a history of disappointment that makes any current friction or bench drama even more acute. The constant turnover or perceived inadequacy in coaching leadership can wear down even the most resilient players, making them more sensitive to any new challenges. This historical context provides crucial insight into Clark's current mindset and her potential impatience with any lingering issues. The past is never truly in the past, and this podcast brought it to the forefront. White's stark comparison between the young Fever team and her previous veteran Connecticut team, particularly regarding practice time and defensive fundamentals, exposed the vast chasm between the two. Her description of Connecticut as a team that had always been really good defensively, where they didn't have to do that, meaning teach basics, underscored the Fever's fundamental deficiencies. This public comparison on Sue Bird's platform, while factual, could easily be interpreted by players like Caitlin Clark as a painful reminder of how far behind they truly are. It paints a picture of a foundational rebuild rather than a team ready to compete at an elite level, a reality that could be deeply frustrating for a generational talent eager for immediate success. The expectation of having to relearn basic principles, a task White implicitly stated was not necessary for a veteran squad, illustrates the sheer magnitude of the developmental curve the Fever face. This public airing of the team's basic struggles, against the backdrop of an elite standard, adds significant weight to the bench drama narrative, suggesting a deep-seated chasm between ambition and current capability. White openly lamented some games that we lost early in the season and even late in the season that you shouldn't lose. Acknowledging these crucial errors cost the Fever dearly, potentially altering their playoff seeding. This blunt assessment on Sue Bird's influential podcast highlighted the tangible consequences of the team's inexperience and inconsistency. For a player like Caitlin Clark, whose entire career has been defined by winning, these preventable losses must have been agonizing. The difference between hosting or going on the road in the playoffs or being a 6th seed versus being the 2nd seed, as White articulated, represents monumental stakes. This candid recognition of past failures and missed opportunities could easily breed frustration and a sense of wasted potential among star players. It signals that the team is not just losing, but losing in ways that reflect a lack of fundamental discipline and execution, issues that could certainly push Clark to her breaking point. The realization that small mistakes had huge consequences, shared publicly, is a clear driver of any bench drama, fueling the narrative of Clark's frustration with the team's current trajectory. White's praise for Caitlin Clark's elite mind and ability to see things through her 3 passes ahead highlighted her unparalleled basketball IQ. However, this compliment delivered on Sue Bird's podcast also implicitly underscored a potential problem. If Clark is operating on such an advanced mental plane, is the rest of the team consistently able to keep up? The discrepancy between Clark's visionary playmaking and the team's developmental stage could be a constant source of friction. An elite mind needs elite execution around it to truly shine, and if her teammates are still struggling with basic principles, Clark's advanced vision might be going unutilized or even misunderstood. This gap between her unique talent and the team's current capabilities could lead to deep frustration for a player who thrives on efficiency and precision. The acknowledgement of her extraordinary foresight, while positive, inadvertently draws attention to the immense challenge of integrating such a generational talent into a still developing roster. It's a dynamic ripe for bench drama, where individual brilliance clashes with collective growth, potentially fueling her desire for a more competitive environment. The most unsettling truth, quietly underscored throughout the podcast, was the persistent struggle to consistently get the best out of 3 stars, Clark, Boston, and Mitchell, simultaneously. White's nuanced observations, shared on Sue Bird's platform, painted a picture of a team perpetually just almost there, but never fully clicking as a cohesive unit. This inability to unlock the full potential of their star core is the ultimate source of frustration, manifesting as the bench drama now making headlines. If the very foundation of the team's strategy, built around these 3, isn't consistently delivering, then doubts about the entire project naturally arise. This isn't about individual blame, it's about a collective failure to synergize at the highest level. The implications of this unresolved core issue are profound, suggesting fundamental problems in scheme chemistry or development. It is this lingering, unaddressed challenge, revealed in stark terms, that sits at the heart of the current crisis, making Clark's alleged ultimatum a desperate plea for a different future. The team's inability to truly coalesce is the unspoken threat to its future. The raw truths aired on Sue Bird's podcast created an instant crisis, forcing a reckoning that many believe now demands a direct apology from Bird herself. While not a direct confession, the sheer volume of unsettling revelations, from unspoken tensions with Clark, to the team's defensive shambles, to the glaring inconsistencies in player development, has created an environment of intense scrutiny. The platform Bird provided inadvertently became the stage for a public airing of the Fever's dirty laundry, fueling the very bench drama that is now threatening to dismantle the team. Bird, as the host, bears an indirect responsibility for the fallout, as her show became the catalyst for widespread speculation about Caitlin Clark's future. The public outcry and the severity of the implications have placed Bird in an awkward position, potentially requiring her to address the unintended consequences of her guest's candor. The WNBA is now watching for how Bird will navigate the controversy her own platform helped ignite, as the ripples from this interview threaten to capsize the Fever season and potentially change the league landscape forever. The silence from Bird's camp after these shocking statements has been deafening, adding fuel to the fire, and now it's only a matter of time before she has to address the turmoil. The growing unease and palpable frustration, exacerbated by the podcast's candid revelations, culminated in what sources are now calling Caitlin Clark's desperate ultimatum to the Fever front office. The whispers suggest Clark is demanding immediate, fundamental changes to how the team is managed, coached, and built, or she will consider her future elsewhere. This isn't just about bench drama, it's about a generational talent refusing to be bogged down by persistent systemic issues that were laid bare for the world to see on Sue Bird's platform. The inability to consistently win, the perceived lack of cohesion, and the arduous developmental curve, all discussed openly by Coach White, have reportedly pushed Clark to a breaking point. The Fever now stand at a critical crossroads: acquiesce to their superstars' demands and overhaul their approach, or risk losing the very player who was supposed to redefine their franchise. The pressure on the front office is immense, as the entire league watches to see if they can navigate this unprecedented challenge. Clark's alleged ultimatum signifies a turning point, a clear message that the current trajectory is simply unsustainable. Her patience, it seems, has finally run out, leaving the franchise scrambling to salvage its future. The future of the Fever hinges on their response to this seismic challenge. The fallout from Sue Bird's podcast, detailing the Fever's inner workings and the visible fissures within the team, has dramatically reshaped the narrative surrounding Caitlin Clark and her future. What began as a candid interview has spiraled into a full-blown crisis, forcing the WNBA to confront uncomfortable truths about team dynamics, player satisfaction, and the monumental pressure on its brightest stars. The bench drama, fueled by unmet expectations and exposed organizational challenges, now threatens to overshadow the immense talent Clark brings to the league. The question isn't just whether Clark will stay, but whether any franchise can truly manage the unprecedented weight of a Taylor Swift 2.0 athlete in a developing environment. This moment could redefine how star players assert their influence and how teams respond to internal strife. The stakes have never been higher for the Fever, as their reaction to this storm will not only determine Clark's fate but also set a precedent for the entire league. The ultimate truth revealed is that immense talent demands an equally elite, cohesive, and supportive system, a system that, according to these shocking revelations, the Fever may not yet possess. The path forward for both Clark and the Fever is now murky, defined by public scrutiny and an urgent need for profound change.